The ballroom glowed with chandeliers heavy as constellations. Silk gowns swept across the marble, laughter echoing like polished glass. In the corner, 4 figures clustered together, wealth carved into their cheekbones, entitlement dripping from their champagne. Then it happened. The blonde in the crimson dress tilted her head back, eyes glinting, voice sharp enough to cut through the music. "Serve us drinks, ape." Her friends exploded in laughter. One man slapped another's shoulder, teeth flashing as if cruelty itself was entertainment. Another woman raised her flute, mocking applause. Every head nearby turned. A few gasps, a few chuckles. The words didn't just land, they detonated, spreading through the hall like smoke. Across from them, she stood. The black woman in a white dress, shoulders squared, neckline simple yet radiant under the lights. No necklace, no ornament, just the kind of presence that made jewelry unnecessary. Her phone was already at her ear, not for show, but mid-conversation. For half a second, the insult seemed to dangle in the air, waiting for her to crumble. She didn't. She angled her chin, eyes narrowing not in shock but in recognition. She'd seen this play before. Different stage, same script. Her fingers flexed against the phone. "Yes," she murmured into the receiver, voice steady, barely above a whisper. "Proceed as planned." The blonde laughed louder, nudging her date. "She even pretends to be on a call. How cute." The men smirked. One gestured toward her as though presenting a curiosity at auction. "Look at that dress, probably rented. Security should keep people like her outside, not mingling with us." But she didn't move, didn't flinch. Her silence was sharper than any retort. The laughter around her rang false now, hollow, like glasses clinking on cracked crystal. From the far side of the hall, a young waiter paused mid-step. His tray shook slightly, eyes flicking between the group and the woman they mocked. Slowly, carefully, he slipped his phone from his pocket, thumb hovering over record. The air changed. You could feel it, an invisible current running beneath the violins, beneath the chatter. Guests whispered, shifting uncomfortably. Some stared. Others looked away, complicit in their silence. She remained rooted, one hand steady at her side, the other clutching the phone, her voice now low, deliberate. "Confirm everything. If they ask why, tell them respect has a cost." The words weren't aimed at the billionaires jeering in front of her. They were for someone else, someone listening, someone about to move pieces much larger than champagne glasses. And yet the mockers didn't hear the warning buried in her calm. They only saw what they wanted to see, someone beneath them. They had no idea that the woman they reduced to a servant was about to erase a $5 billion future with a single command. The insult still hung in the air, but she did not chase it. She let it drift, weightless, meaningless compared to the gravity of who she was. Her name was Maya Carter. To the billionaires laughing in their tailored tuxedos, she looked like an intruder, an overdressed stranger who had wandered too close to their orbit. To everyone else in that ballroom, she appeared as just another guest, elegant but unremarkable in a white gown without logos or glitter. That was intentional. Maya had chosen simplicity the way a surgeon chooses a scalpel, sharp, precise, leaving no distraction from the work ahead. She wore no necklace, no diamond earrings, only a dress cut clean against her shoulders. Some mistook it for plainness. In truth, it was armor, nothing they could use to label her, no excess to weaponize. She had walked into this ballroom for one reason, the final signing of a $5 billion partnership. Months of negotiation, weeks of late-night calls, armies of attorneys. Tonight was supposed to be celebration. Contracts were ready, glasses chilled. The Carter Global team was waiting for her signal. But Maya knew better than to expect smooth seas. She had lived too long in storms. She remembered being 22, fresh out of grad school, sitting in a hotel lobby while executives filed past her. She wore her best blazer, resume in hand, waiting for an interview. A man in a navy suit approached and asked if she could fetch him water. When she explained she was a candidate, he laughed and said, "Not with those shoes." That laughter had never left her bones. It followed her into every boardroom, every negotiation, every gala where she was the only black woman at the table. It was the ghost in the room, whispering that she didn't belong, and each time, she sharpened her silence into something stronger than rage. Tonight was no different. She stood alone near the marble column, one hand at her side, the other gripping her phone. On the other end, her chief of staff waited in a downtown office, watching a live feed of the event. The company's internal system was primed, One word from her, and deals would shift, accounts would lock, entire fortunes would freeze. Yet here, in the glitter of chandeliers, none of that power showed. Not yet. To the family mocking her, she was invisible wealth, richness, hidden beneath restraint. The irony? The very deal they were celebrating, the deal that would cement their empire for another generation, depended entirely on her signature. Without her, it was ink on water. She inhaled slowly, eyes tracing the golden arch of the ballroom ceiling. Let them laugh. Let them mistake her for staff, for nothing, for less than human. Every second they spent mocking her was another second they proved themselves unworthy of the contract. From across the room, she caught her reflection in a gilt mirror, tall, poised, unshaken. She thought of her mother's words years ago. You don't need to shout to be heard. The right people will hear you in silence. Maya adjusted her phone against her ear, her voice calm, almost tender. Keep everything ready. They're writing their own ending. The orchestra played on. The laughter at her expense grew thinner, hollower, and the woman in white remained steady, waiting not for apology, but for the perfect moment to strike. The orchestra slid into a soft waltz, strings curling like smoke through the air. Yet near the champagne fountain, the atmosphere grew jagged. The family wasn't finished. The eldest son, tall, shoulders boxed inside a navy tux, leaned forward with a smirk that carried generations of unchecked privilege. He gestured at Maya's dress, tilting his glass. Which catering company sent you? I'll need another drink before this contract nonsense bores me to death. The others chuckled. His sister, draped in emerald silk, added with a laugh sharp enough to pierce the music. People like you don't sit at investor tables. You clear them. In. Their words dropped like stones in water ripples, pushing outward, catching ears, stiffening shoulders. Some guests froze, glances darting toward Maya then away, torn between conscience and comfort. Maya did not flinch. She had practiced this silence 1,000 times. Silence that was not weakness but a blade, honed across decades of being underestimated. She let them talk, let them reveal themselves. The youngest son, emboldened by laughter, raised his phone and pretended to snap a photo. Look at this, a stray in white. Should we tag her as staff? He laughed at his own cruelty, expecting the room to join him. Not everyone did. Across the ballroom, a junior associate barely 23, badge tucked into his jacket, shifted uncomfortably, his brow furrowed. Quietly, he angled his phone camera toward the scene. Record. A small act of rebellion in plain sight. Maya's voice broke the tension, not loud, not pleading, just measured. Is this how you treat every partner, or only the ones who look like me? The laughter faltered, thin now, uncertain. The sister rolled her eyes, trying to patch the moment with derision. Partner? Sweetheart, you're lost. This is a billionaire's party. You don't belong. Maya's gaze was steady, her tone colder than ice. I belong wherever I decide to place value. And tonight, that value isn't looking good for you. The words weren't shouted, but they landed like thunder muffled under velvet. A waiter paused mid-pour. A guest near the balcony whispered, Did she just say partner? The rumor began to coil. But the family only saw their reflection in wealth, not the storm behind Maya's calm. The eldest son stepped closer, towering as if shadow could replace substance. He flicked his cufflinks, sneering. Play the part all you want. When the papers are signed, you'll be gone. Back to wherever it is you crawled from. Maya tilted her head slightly, almost amused. Her phone buzzed in her hand. One glance at the screen, a message from her chief of staff. Everything ready. Just give the word. She locked eyes with the family. Funny, you think I'm here to be dismissed, but the only thing about to disappear is your deal. The smirk drained from the son's face. The laughter stalled. For the first time, doubt flickered in the room. The escalation had begun. The ballroom swelled with noise laughter from one side, whispers from the other. Crystal glasses clinked, violins tried to drown the tension, but the air was no longer smooth. It was brittle, ready to fracture. Maya Carter stood in the center of it all, motionless, framed by chandeliers that spilled gold across her shoulders. The family waited for her to argue, to snap, to raise her voice, and confirm their caricature of who they thought she was. She didn't. Her silence cut deeper than fury ever could. She lifted her champagne glass not to drink, but to set it carefully back on the table. The gesture was deliberate, surgical. Her breathing was even. Her gaze locked on the eldest son's smirk until it faltered. For a moment, the laughter stumbled. Jokes lose power when the target doesn't bend. Maya pressed the phone closer to her ear, her voice low enough to be mistaken for background hum. Yes, everything's aligned. Hold until I say, ugh. On the other end, her chief of staff didn't ask questions. They knew this tone, calm before an execution. The sister in emerald leaned in, whispering just loud enough for nearby guests. She thinks she's someone important. That's cute. Her diamond necklace flashed as she laughed again, forcing the sound into the room. Maya let the words pass through her as if they didn't exist. Inside, her mind traced back to every boardroom where men twice her age had spoken over her. Every investor who had asked if she was the assistant. She had learned long ago that reaction fed predators. Restraint starved them. The young associate recording near the balcony glanced around nervously. No one stopped him. In fact, another guest pulled out a phone. Then another. The quiet began to tilt. People were no longer laughing, they were watching. Maya shifted her weight slightly, the hem of her white dress brushing the marble like a whisper. She was not retreating. She was anchoring. Finally, she spoke not to the family, but to the air, to the witnesses, to the future. Dignity doesn't answer insults. It documents them. The words slid across the room, soft but undeniable. A waiter froze mid-step. Someone at the bar murmured, "Did you hear that?" The eldest son tried to reclaim the stage, chuckling too loud. Look at her so dramatic. Security should escort her out before she embarrasses herself further. But his laugh didn't land. It cracked against the wall of her composure. Guests exchanged uneasy looks. A woman in sapphire whispered to her husband, "She doesn't look embarrassed. She looks in control." Maya's eyes flicked toward the clock mounted above the ballroom doors. Every second stretched like a held breath. She wasn't rushing. She was waiting for them to bury themselves deeper, for the moment when silence would no longer just defend, but destroy. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. Contracts paused. Funds pending your signal. Maya lowered the device, letting it rest at her side. Her stillness was louder than any protest. She looked at the family one by one, her expression unreadable, and thought, "You think my calm means weakness. In truth, it means you're already finished." The ballroom didn't know it yet, but the countdown had already begun. The room wanted to move on. The violins swelled. The clinking of glasses tried to bury the ugliness under gold and crystal. But the words lingered, souring the air. Near the edge of the ballroom, a young waiter balanced a tray of sparkling flutes. His name tag read Ethan, 21, first month on the job. He had heard rude guests before, but this was different. The laughter wasn't careless, it was cutting. He felt it in his chest. Ethan shifted the tray to his left hand, slipped his phone from his pocket, and tapped record. His thumb trembled, but his jaw clenched. Someone needs to see this. Across the hall, a junior associate from a rival firm noticed. Her name was Priya, barely 24, sharp-eyed, hungry for her first real deal. She caught Ethan's movement and understood instantly. Without hesitation, she raised her own phone. 2 angles now, silent witnesses etching truth into memory. The emerald-draped sister noticed the murmurs, the shifting gaze of nearby guests. She leaned closer to Maya, voice dripping venom. "What are you staring at? Do you really think anyone here believes you belong?" Maya's eyes didn't leave hers. Calm, steady, she answered without raising her voice. "Belief isn't required. Proof is coming." The line landed, soft but electric. Priya's eyebrows lifted. Ethan's lips parted. Guests nearby exchanged glances. The mockery was unraveling into spectacle. At the corner of the dance floor, a middle-aged man adjusted his tie, whispering to his wife. "She doesn't look like staff. She looks like she owns something." His wife frowned, nodding toward the family. "And they look nervous, don't they?" Phones began to rise, subtle at first, then bolder. A circle of eyes widened around the confrontation. The laughter that once drowned the room now sounded forced, brittle. Ethan inched closer, tray still in hand, phone angled low. He captured the eldest son sneering, captured Maya's silence, captured the tension tightening like a rope ready to snap. Then came the voice, faint, hesitant, but enough to ripple across the crowd. "She's telling the truth," Priya said, stepping forward. Her voice shook, but conviction sharpened the edges. "I saw her name on the guest list when I checked in. Carter. She's not staff." The family froze. For the first time, doubt crossed their faces. The sisters stammered, "That list was a mistake." "No," Priya pressed, louder now, eyes darting to the onlookers. "It was there, clear as day." The orchestra faltered, a violin bow dragging one note too long. Silence spread wider than the music. Maya didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her stillness magnified Priya's words. Every guest filming, every eye watching, every whisper multiplying together, they became a mirror, showing the family exactly how small they looked. Ethan lowered his tray onto a side table, no longer pretending. He steadied his phone with both hands, capturing it all. Under his breath, barely audible. "They're done." And for the first time that night, the billionaires felt the ground tilt beneath them. The witnesses were no longer silent. The ballroom no longer shimmered with ease. It vibrated with unease. Glasses were raised, but hands trembled. The orchestra played on, but each note sounded like it was covering a wound. The emerald-draped sister's smirk cracked. Too many eyes, too many phones. She snapped her fingers at a passing server. "Remove her. Now." The young server froze, eyes flicking to Maya, then to the guests filming. His tray wobbled. He didn't move. Frustration flared. The eldest son stepped forward, towering over Maya, his cologne sharp, his voice sharper. "You've overstayed your welcome. This is a private deal. You don't belong at this table, and you never will." He snatched the guest list booklet from a podium, flipping through it theatrically. "See? No Carter here." But Priya's voice cut through, firmer now. "That's because you pulled her name out. I saw it. Don't lie." Gasps rippled. A woman in sapphire turned to her husband. "They erased her name?" He nodded grimly. "Looks like it." The brother slammed the booklet shut and threw it onto the table. "Enough! Security!" His voice boomed, desperation disguised as authority. No guard came, only silence. Phones tilted higher. The crowd was no longer with him. The mother, matriarch draped in diamonds heavy as armor, finally spoke, her tone dripping with disdain. "Why are we even entertaining this? Look at her. A plain dress, no entourage, no pedigree. Money has a language, and she doesn't speak it." That line, meant to wound, only deepened the crack. A guest at the bar muttered, "Pedigree? Who even talks like that anymore?" Another whispered, "Arrogance has a language too." Maya remained unmoved, her face calm, her breath even, but her silence was pressure, building, suffocating. She tapped her phone once, screen lighting against her palm. The eldest son misread her composure as weakness. He leaned closer, voice low but venomous. "Here's how this works. We make the rules. You play along, or you get crushed. Understand?" Maya's gaze met his, steady as stone. She didn't speak. The quiet stretched so long it made the crowd ache. Then, softly, almost like a prayer, she answered, "You mistake cruelty for power. That's your last mistake tonight." The words fell like ice water, and the crowd shivered. Ethan's phone caught every syllable. Priya's camera captured the son's stunned face. The witnesses were multiplying, and the family's control was slipping. Fast. The matriarch's hand trembled against her glass. She forced a laugh. "She's bluffing. That's all this island bluff." But the guests weren't laughing anymore. The tide had shifted. What began as mockery was becoming exposure, and the billionaires, once untouchable, were suddenly the ones trapped under the light. The chandeliers burned brighter than ever, but the warmth in the ballroom was gone. What remained was sharp, brittle like glass about to shatter. The eldest son, humiliated by the quiet strength pressing down on him, needed one final strike to prove control. He reached across the table and snatched Maya's event badge from where it lay. Without even glancing at it, he tore it in half. The sound of paper ripping cracked louder than the violins. "Fake!" he spat, tossing the shreds to the marble floor. "Get her out!" Gasps rippled through the guests. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered like punctuation. Maya did not bend to pick it up. She didn't move at all. Her stillness was heavier than rage. The Emerald Sister clapped slowly, mocking applause. "Bravo! She almost fooled us." She held out her empty flute toward Maya like she was extending a dog's leash. "Clear this. It's the only job you'll get tonight." The matriarch leaned forward, voice low, venom laced with entitlement. "Do yourself a favor, dear. Walk out before we ruin you permanently." Phones caught every angle, the shredded badge on the floor, the sister's sneer, the matriarch's threat. Ethan zoomed in, his hands steady now. Priya's voice, barely a whisper, carried anyway. They don't realize who she is. The youngest son, drunk on champagne and arrogance, took it further. He nudged a passing waiter, snatching a tray of hors d'oeuvre. With exaggerated flourish, he shoved the tray into Maya's hands. "Here," he barked, laughter slicing the silence. "Make yourself useful. Serve." The room froze. It wasn't just insult anymore. It was degradation, performance cruelty, designed to humiliate in front of hundreds. Maya's fingers closed around the silver tray, not trembling, not resisting. She held it steady, eyes locked on the sun. For a heartbeat, it looked like compliance. The family laughed, high and hollow, mistaking control for victory. But the guests saw something else. Her grip wasn't servile. It was measured. Her gaze wasn't broken. It was surgical. She lowered the tray to the nearest table, untouched. Then she straightened, the white of her gown gleaming beneath the chandeliers. Not a servant, not a victim, a storm gathering in silence. The matriarch's voice, shrill now, tried to fill the room. "Throw her out! She's nothing! She doesn't belong here, never has, never will." But her words rang desperate. The crowd had shifted. Murmurs surged. "This is disgusting! She hasn't even raised her voice." And they tore her badge. Phones lifted higher. The witness circle tightened. The pressure was unbearable, but not on Maya. On them. Maya touched her phone once more, her voice calm, almost gentle. Yes, time-stamped this moment. The family didn't hear the blade hidden in those words, but everyone else did. And in that instant, the game changed. The silver tray rested untouched on the table. The laughter around it cracked, brittle, already losing its shine. Maya Carter straightened her posture, shoulders drawn back, the white gown flowing like calm water, but her eyes burned steady, unflinching. She pressed her phone against her ear, her voice a whisper sharpened into steel. "Cancel the deal. Effective immediately." Her words weren't loud, yet they landed like thunder muffled beneath velvet. Ethan's phone caught every syllable. Priya's camera zoomed in on the family's faces, the sudden flicker of confusion, the disbelief bleeding into dread. The eldest son barked a hollow laugh, trying to claw back power. "Cancel? You don't cancel 5 billion. That's above your pay grade." Maya lowered the phone, letting the screen glow against her palm. She didn't answer him. She didn't need to. Silence hung heavier than denial. On the other end of her line, her chief of staff's voice rang clear, projected just loud enough for those near her to hear. "Confirmation received. Funds are frozen. Notification sent." The matriarch's jeweled hand stiffened around her glass. The flute tilted, spilling champagne down her diamond bracelet. Gasps rose from the crowd. Maya's gaze swept across the family, her voice calm, almost tender. "You mocked me like a servant, but I'm the partner you needed most. And now, I've decided you're not worthy." The room shifted. It wasn't just guests filming anymore, it was guests choosing sides. A man in a navy suit whispered, "She just canceled something. Did you hear that?" His companion nodded, eyes wide. "The deal, she has that power?" The youngest son, still clutching bravado like a shield, stepped closer. "You're bluffing. A stunt for attention. You think anyone believes you?" Priya stepped forward, voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "I believe her. I saw her name on the contracts. Carter Global. She's not bluffing." The whisper turned tidal. "Carter Global? She's the CEO? 5 billion gone?" Maya didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply pressed her phone once more. Her words clipped. Final. Proceed with termination notices. Mark this location as the breach point. On cue, a vibration hummed across the matriarch's clutch. Her phone screen lit up. Then the eldest son's. Then the sisters'. 3 devices, buzzing with synchronized alerts. They looked down, and whatever color remained in their faces drained. The notifications were real. Maya lifted her gaze to the chandelier, exhaling steady, as if the entire ballroom was nothing more than another meeting she had already prepared for. Her final words cut through the silence. "Respect isn't free. Tonight you learned its price." And with that, the first strike was complete. The buzzing phones glowed like small spotlights, betraying the family's panic. The matriarch clawed at her clutch, scrolling through the notification, her face draining with every word she read. "No," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. This isn't possible." The eldest son's bravado cracked. He shoved his phone into his pocket, as if hiding the message could erase it. His voice was brittle now. "A trick! A fake app! She can't—" Maya cut him off with nothing more than a glance. Then, for the first time that night, she raised her voice, not loud, not frantic, but clear enough for every chandelier-lit corner of the ballroom to hear. My name is Maya Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Global. The words struck harder than any shout. Silence roared through the room. Guests stopped mid-sip, mid-step, mid-whisper. Even the orchestra faltered, bows dragging across strings until the music collapsed into quiet. Maya stepped forward, the shredded badge still lying at her feet. The deal you were celebrating tonight? The contracts you toasted with my name erased from the list? They don't exist without me, and as of 5 minutes ago, they never will. Gasps echoed like thunder. Phones tilted higher. Priya's live stream chat exploded in the background, comments racing faster than anyone could read. The Emerald sister staggered back a step, emerald silk rustling against marble. You're lying! You came here alone. No entourage, no press, no costume, Maya interrupted, her tone cutting, cold. Because I don't need one. Power doesn't advertise, it executes. The matriarch's diamonds rattled against her chest as she turned to the crowd. She's exaggerating. Don't listen. She's nothing but... A guest near the bar interrupted, voice sharp. Nothing? She just froze 5 billion, while you spilled champagne down your own arm. Laughter rippled, not cruel but liberating. It cut against the family, not against her. The eldest son's face flushed red, his jaw clenched tight. If you had this power, why come here at all? Why stand among us? Maya's eyes softened, not with pity, but with memory. Because I wanted to see one last time if things had changed. If respect had finally grown beyond faces, beyond names, beyond color. And now I have my answer. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged, a verdict delivered without a gavel. Ethan, still filming, whispered to no one in particular. She owns it all. She really owns it. Maya looked across the ballroom, her voice steady, final. You called me less than human in a room built on my signature, and tonight, you watched your empire collapse because you couldn't see the woman who held it together. The chandeliers didn't flicker, the marble didn't crack, but the empire above their heads had already fallen. The ballroom was no longer theirs. The family who once commanded the room now stood caged by silence. Their own arrogance turned into bars. The matriarch clutched her pearls as if they could shield her from consequence. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Diamonds glittered, but her power dimmed. The eldest son's swagger drained, leaving only panic. He barked at no one in particular, "Shut the cameras off, now!" But no one listened. Phones stayed up, dozens of tiny eyes recording every tremor in his voice. The Emerald sister's laughter had evaporated. She pressed a trembling hand against her glass, knuckles white, mascara threatening to run. "We didn't know," she whispered, though no one asked. Her excuse dissolved into the marble floor. The youngest son's arrogance twisted into desperation. He lunged toward Ethan, hand reaching for the phone. "Delete it!" he shouted, voice breaking. Ethan didn't flinch. He stepped back, shielded by guests who instinctively formed a barrier. A man in a navy suit growled, "Touch him again and you'll regret it." The crowd was no longer passive. It was awake. Murmurs grew into a tide. "Unbelievable." They tore her badge. "And she owns the company?" 5 billion gone, just like that. Priya's live stream ticked past 10,000 viewers, comments flooding, "She's the CEO. This is history. Justice in real time." The matriarch tried one last command, her voice trembling. "Security! Remove her!" But the guards at the edge of the hall didn't move. One of them shook his head subtly, crossing his arms. They had seen enough. Maya hadn't spoken since her reveal. She didn't need to. Her silence let their unraveling scream louder than anything she could say. The eldest son gripped the shredded badge still on the floor, holding it up like evidence. "This doesn't prove anything." His hand shook. You forged this whole..." "Forged?" A guest snapped. It was the woman in sapphire, voice ringing clear. "We saw the notifications. We heard her team. You humiliated the owner of the very deal you depended on, and now you've lost everything." Applause didn't erupt. Not yet. But something heavier filled the room alignment. The crowd shifted, no longer an audience but a jury, their eyes sharp, unforgiving. The Emerald sister's knees buckled. She sank into a chair, face pale. The matriarch whispered frantically to her sons, "We can fix this, we can fix this." But her words sounded hollow even to herself. Every camera lens, Every whisper, every guest was now a witness. Their empire wasn't falling in private. It was being dismantled in public, one humiliating second at a time. And at the center of it all, Maya Carter stood still. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't raised her hand. She had only raised the truth, and it was more than enough to break them. The collapse was already underway, but Maya Carter had no intention of leaving it unfinished. She lifted her phone once more, her movements calm, deliberate as though she were signing paperwork in her office, not standing in the middle of a gilded ballroom. "Document everything," she said softly. "This will be entered into record." On the other end, her chief of staff replied with crisp efficiency. "Already done. The termination protocols are live. Final authorization needed." Ugh. Maya's gaze swept across the family. The matriarch trembling in diamonds, the eldest son sweating under his tuxedo, the emerald sister collapsed in her chair, the youngest pacing like a caged animal, each face a portrait of power unraveling. "Authorization confirmed," Maya said. "Effective immediately, terminate all Carter Global negotiations with this family. Freeze outstanding transfers. Cancel credit extensions. Flag their accounts for audit." Her words were ice, but the impact was fire. Phones in the family's hands buzzed again, alerts piling like bricks, each one sealing the collapse. Deal canceled. Access revoked. Contracts voided. The matriarch gasped, clutching her phone. This ruins us." Maya's eyes flicked to her, steady as stone. "Number, you ruined yourselves." A murmur of approval rippled through the guests. Someone clapped once, sharp, before silence reclaimed the hall. The eldest son lunged forward, pointing at Maya as if accusation could still save him. "You can't just erase us. We built this empire." Her reply was soft, lethal. "You built nothing. You inherited. And tonight, you proved you were unfit to keep even that." The youngest son's voice cracked. You'll regret this. We'll sue." Maya tilted her head, almost amused. "Sue me? In a contract you no longer have? In a deal that never closed? The only thing you'll be filing are bankruptcy papers." The line hit like a gavel. Guests gasped, then exhaled. Priya's livestream comment section exploded with fire emojis and, "This is justice." The Emerald sister broke, tears streaking mascara across her face. She whispered, "Please, we didn't mean..." But Maya cut her off with the calm finality of a verdict. Intent doesn't erase impact, and forgiveness doesn't erase consequence. She pressed her phone one last time. "Send the formal notice. Tonight." On the far side of the ballroom, a projector screen lit up Carter Global's logo flashing, followed by a single message broadcast for every guest to see. "Partnership terminated 9:47 p.m. breach. Disrespect of executive authority." The family stared at the glowing words, faces pale, hands trembling. There was no undoing it, no denying it. Their downfall was stamped, signed, sealed in front of hundreds. Maya lowered her phone. "This room belongs to dignity now," she said, her voice carrying like a benediction. And in that moment, justice wasn't loud. It was absolute. The ballroom stood still, frozen in the glow of the projection screen. "Partnership terminated 9:47 p.m. The words burned brighter than the chandeliers, brighter than the diamonds now useless on the matriarch's chest. For a long moment, no one breathed. The family's empire had collapsed in real time, not with a bang, but with a sentence. Maya Carter stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly against the marble, each step deliberate, carrying the weight of centuries of silence now broken by truth. She stopped in the center of the room, her white gown gleaming against the fractured pride of those who had mocked her minutes before. The guests parted for her without being asked. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Phones lowered slightly, not because the recording ended, but because the moment had shifted. It wasn't scandal anymore, it was history. Maya lifted her gaze to the family one last time. Her voice was calm, even gentle, but it carried across the hall like a verdict etched into stone. "You thought you could erase me with laughter. You thought silence meant submission, but silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. And tonight, that silence cost you $5 billion. Her words rippled through the crowd, echoed in whispers, stamped in memory. The matriarch slumped into her chair, defeated. The eldest son stared at the floor, hands shaking. The Emerald sister buried her face in her palms. The youngest muttered curses that no one cared to hear. Maya turned away from them. She wasn't here to linger over ruins. She was here to build. At the edge of the room, Ethan still filmed, eyes wide with something more than awe. It was vindication. Priya's livestream comments raced faster than anyone could read. She's a legend. Power in silence. This is how justice looks. Maya adjusted the hem of her gown, lifted her chin, and spoke one last time. Not to the family, not even to the guests, to everyone watching inside the ballroom and beyond the screen. I don't need to raise my voice. I don't need a recording to prove what happened here, because I am the recording. I am the result. I am the cost of disrespect. The words landed like the closing of a door, final and irreversible. And then she walked out. Not hurried, not triumphant. Simply steady, dignified, unstoppable. Behind her, applause began not wild, but measured, purposeful. One pair of hands, then another, until the hall pulsed with it. Not for spectacle, not for gossip, for justice. The family sat crumbling in their chairs, drowned by the sound of respect they could never command, only lose. Maya Carter did not look back. She didn't need to. The night was already hers.